It's been a wonderful ride these last 20 years working with Marc Emery, and we got a lot more work to do. I know he's going to get right back at it, but here you go, the Prince of Pot, my friend, Marc Emery.
Well, it's fun to be me, you know, and I even said that while I was in prison because, you know, doing something, let's almost use the word noble, doing something on principle, giving a good chunk of your life in sacrifice, I guess, for principle, even in prison was highly regarded. You know, in the 4.5 years I was in prison, I really never heard an unkind word spoken to me by any inmate. And I was in a medium security prison for almost all of that, and a lot of these people are serving life imprisonment without parole. They've come down from the penitentiary, they're covered in tattoos. They're badass dudes, a lot of them, or at least they think they are. And they're serving horribly long sentences, by and large, for drugs. Mostly methamphetamine, crack, cocaine, but certainly there were many, many people there for marijuana, serving 10, 15, and even in one case 25 years for marijuana distribution. So I was able to be very productive in jail. I wrote a lot, I blogged, I read a book every week, I had 25 magazine subscriptions, I got the New York Times every day. I learned how to play the bass guitar and was in an outstanding rock and roll band of incredibly talented musicians. And all of them were very patient in teaching me at no charge for anything, music and music principles and how to be a bass guitarist. And I must tell you that it was a very redemptive and meaningful experience being in prison. And I hope I always carry the message forward that I saw there that, you know, it is a very wrong society that punishes people for drugs and puts them in jail for decades and takes them away from their family and their children and essentially ruins their life because of a lifestyle choice they made. And we manufacture crime. With the drug laws, we actually create criminals. Because if you think that, you know, if we took away a certain law and it reduced the crime to zero, then it must be the law. Because certainly, if we ended the criminal sanctions for murder, we wouldn't expect murders to go down. You know, if we ended a criminal sanction on robbery, in other words, it was okay to rob people, we won't prosecute it, we wouldn't expect robberies to become less frequent. But in the case of so-called drug crimes, if we just simply eliminate the drug laws, we eliminate the drug crime. So therefore, these laws must be illegitimate because they serve no public safety function or purpose. They just create criminals who get recycled through the prison system and provide an income for people exploiting those people. And so the real evil people here are the politicians that pass those laws, keep those laws in place, even though there has never been any public benefit to prohibition. There's, you know, I get called a lot of things, an egomaniac, a jerk, an asshole. In fact, there's a number of, you know, critics out there in newspapers who said that. Margaret Went in the Globe and Mail the other day, Warren Kinsella on the Sun News, saying I'm an egomaniac out to promote myself, etc., etc. But what I never hear is any actual criticism that says the good thing about marijuana prohibition is this. Marijuana prohibition was justified in giving 2 million Canadians criminal records and hundreds of thousands of people going to jail and all the cops that have killed people's pets and invaded their home and destroyed their lives and all the young people who got criminal records who couldn't go to the United States for a job or a university and all the bad things that happen, all the street violence from gangs that happens as a result of prohibition. We get all the negative things, but we've never received a positive benefit for those billions of dollars and all those lives ruined and all those people who got arrested. Never has a politician said, here's the reason we have prohibition, the good reason. And we were still waiting for it. After 45 years of millions of people being arrested for marijuana, we've never had a politician say, well, here's why we're doing all that. Here's why we're punishing everybody, all the citizens who use marijuana, those who don't, with their taxes. Here's why we're putting people in jail. Here's why we're giving people criminal records. Here's why we're shooting their dogs when we raid them. Here's why we destroy their home when we move in. Here's why we seize all their assets in their home because they were merely growing marijuana. We've never heard what the reason was that this was a good policy. And to this day, I've been back now 28 hours, and what a wonderful time it's been, I must tell you. But I've never heard in all the interviews I've done in 28 hours a single criticism that says, you're wrong on the facts. Yeah, they've called me an egomaniac, yeah, they called me a jerk, they've called me all sorts of names, you know, but they've never said you're wrong in the facts that you are espousing. They don't say, no, what you say about prohibition is incorrect. Marijuana prohibition is a wonderful thing. None of the critics say that. They totally avoid the issue. They just say, oh, Marc Emery, is going to ruin it for Justin Trudeau, or Marc Emery shouldn't be giving advice to the Liberals. And I'm saying, but if what I'm saying is true, shouldn't you be saying the Liberals should embrace him and all the people like him who simply want justice after 45 years for what is indisputably a true assertion? Marijuana prohibition has no useful social purpose as political policy in any civilized society. And that's the end of the argument. It's right there. There's no good thing about marijuana prohibition. Why do we still have it? And yet so many of these editorialists will dance around the obvious just to call me names. And you think they'd be more polite in a way, because I spent 4.5 years in jail purely on my principles, purely because I believed in something so substantially I was willing to go to jail, and have always been willing to go to jail. I've been arrested 28 times for marijuana offenses for my beliefs. I've been to jail 23 times. I was jailed as long as 3 months in Saskatoon for just passing one joint at a rally. And then a vindictive judge wanted to send me a lesson. I've tried to get arrested over 50 times for marijuana prohibition, starting back in London, Ontario in 1992, when I gave away High Times magazine right in front of the police station door to force them to charge me for distributing illegal drug literature. I've been trying, and in fact, in the summer of legalization, came to 9 communities in Ontario and smoked a huge 1-ounce joint in front of police stations from Windsor to Ottawa to North Bay down to Hamilton in an attempt to get arrested, to prove to people that the marijuana laws at the time didn't exist, but also to prove that marijuana is a legitimate thing, it's a peaceful lifestyle choice, and we should never have to endure any punishment or discrimination or any kind of abuse because we choose this peaceful lifestyle. So I've been doing this for 22 years. My most recent stint in a U.S. federal prison was for 4.5 years. And I've come through it, and I would say unscathed. I'd like to say I've come through it in better health, in better spirits than I ever was. I feel better about our movement than I have ever felt. The progress that's been made in my absence has been stunning. I hope most people here are fairly young, and I hope you can appreciate what's happened that has never happened before. I mean, the pot people, I will tell you this candidly, privately, we have never had it so good. And we've never had it so good because of the efforts of many people who, along with me, are all the old school fighters who made it this far. It's true that when I started my marijuana activism in 1990, you couldn't get High Times magazine, you couldn't buy a bong or a pipe, you couldn't find any literature about marijuana whatsoever. It was banned. No one talked about it in newspapers. Nobody wrote editorials saying we should legalize it. Nobody was having ballot initiatives. There was no medical marijuana. There was no industrial hemp. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. The concept of cannabis culture simply did not exist. People bought their marijuana from a dealer and they went home and they smoked it and they never talked about it. They never had a rally. From 1981 to 1993, if you go and check, there was no Google equivalent for that period, but there was not a single marijuana rally for 12 years anywhere in Canada from 1981 to 1993. The first really major rally to break that was in 1993 in Vancouver. And then, in Vancouver, we invented the 420 and the Cannabis Day celebration. Those are homegrown Canadian holidays. 420 was started in 1995 right beside our store at Victory Square when 2 deadheads came up to me and they said, Marc, can we have a celebration in the park next door on 420? And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, they were deadheads. They were in the Grateful Dead. They used to tour around, and they said, on 420 every day we smoked marijuana in dead culture. And, they started doing it in the store, or the first Hemp BC store in 1994. And as April 1995 went along, they said, can we have a celebration on April 20th? And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, can we celebrate 420 and in the park? I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, we'll just smoke pot all day in the park, and we'll party and have musicians. And I said, what, all day? And they said, yeah. And I said, do you think we could get away with that? And they go, yeah, I think we would. I said, we go to the park, we'll take it over, and we'll smoke pot all day and play music, and you think the police are going to let us do that in the middle of a public park? They said, yeah, I think they do that. And then they said, so will you do that? Is that something you would do with us? And I thought about it, and I said, no, that's far too decadent. We can't spend all day and smoke pot in a park. You know, I mean, the Ayn Rand capitalist ethos inside me just rebelled at the idea. I mean, like, stop producing wealth and go and party all day in the middle of the week because it's 420? And they said, yeah, we could do that. And I said, no, we can't do that. And so they walked away, and they consulted, and then they came back. And they said, well, Mark, even if you don't approve, can we do it anyway? And I thought, well, I do admire initiative. I said, yes, you can go ahead and do your 420. But then they came back, well, can we use you to pay for it? And I thought, I see how this is going. I said, yes, I'll pay for it. And they said, well, can we run the cables from here down to the park to provide all the power for the stage and everything? I said, yeah, we'll do that. So, of course, we did the 420, and 200 people came by, and we had a wonderful time all day, smoking pot in the park. The police didn't come by and arrest us, and that's one of the biggest things. And now, and then the following year, in 1996, 500 people came, and then the following year, 1,000 people came, and now 25 to 30,000 people come. And it's an event emulated all around the world. And we also were the first sponsors of the Global Marijuana March, too, which takes place in Toronto here. That's an invention, by and large, from Dana Beal, High Times Magazine, and our work that made that a worldwide phenomenon that happens every year. And here's one of the most important things I can tell you about activism. What was the motivation for that 420? It wasn't really me. I made it happen with my money and resources and what have you, and support. But two people went to someone with an idea and said, can we make this happen? 90% of accomplishment in politics is just showing up. Just showing up. All they did came to me and they said, can we do this? And I even said no. And they came back to me and said, well, can we still do it? Right? They wouldn't take no for an answer, and eventually I relented because it made some degree of sense. We went ahead and did it. We got away with it. I'm not sure what would have happened if we'd all been arrested and rounded up, but we didn't get arrested and rounded up, and then we did it, and then it became a worldwide phenomenon that happens everywhere now. 420 is totally ubiquitous. On April 20th, every stoner around the world knows it's a day to celebrate. Even in prison, people came up to me on April 20th and said, Mark, it's April 20th, you want to smoke some pot? I said, I really do want to smoke some pot, but I'm not going to smoke some pot in this prison, because a lot of bad things happen if you have a failed urine test in prison. Terrible things happen, and I just wasn't willing to do that. But even in prison, people all day were going, it's 420, Mark. You want to come and join us? No, I don't want to come join us, but I'm glad you're celebrating. You know, and basically, 200 people showed up in 1995 and hung out and smoked pot in that park and established a historical precedent. And that's often all it takes. So never underestimate your ability to make change. Just showing up is one of the most important words of advice I'll ever give any of you. Just show up. The people who show up are the people who are going to get it done. They're going to be the people who are inspired. So their life is going to take a change for the better because they showed up. And that's really important in an era of social media, because I'm not a big believer that a lot is accomplished on Facebook and Twitter and things like that are really going to generate change. Change happens on the street, meeting people eyeball to eyeball, talking at it in rooms, and going in and getting the powers that be. It's one thing to see change in technology, but to change your social system, to change justice, to change the way the world happens on the street, you've got to get involved. Or really, oftentimes you don't even have to get involved. You just have to show up. You know, that's such a really important thing I want to tell people. And that's what I did a lot of times. Many times my civil disobedience was me, I just showed up. I showed up in front of the police station and said, I'm giving away this High Times magazine. I dare you to arrest me. This is illegal stuff. This is dangerous information. It's a $100,000 fine to be distributing this true information about marijuana. It was a $100,000 fine for your first offense and $300,000 for your second offense. In fact, the penalty for promoting marijuana in a magazine was 50 times greater than the actual financial punishment for possessing marijuana. The most you can be fined for actually possessing marijuana is $2,000. But the fine for telling people about the truth of marijuana was $100,000. And I thought, that's really what it's all about. You see, they really don't care about the marijuana. They acknowledge we're going to get the marijuana. What they really don't want, and it's indicated by the degree of penalty involved, is they don't want you to know about marijuana. They don't want you to know about yourself. They don't want you to know about marijuana history. I mean, we know amazing things about marijuana history now that it goes back 12,000 years, that it was used by all ancient cultures, that it's always had so many wonderful medical effects. One of the major reasons for the Spanish Inquisition was to kill all the women who were giving out marijuana salves and balms and potions and tinctures to help people with medical ailments back in the Middle Ages. Those were the people targeted specifically by the church, because the church did not approve of cannabis. Cannabis was officially demonized by Pope Innocent IV in 1484. The Pope said this marijuana is the work of the devil. Anybody who uses this stuff is an agent of the devil, and therefore we must kill them as heretics. And that's what much of the Spanish Inquisition is all about, is killing the heretics who were using marijuana for spiritual and medical reasons. People have paid the price in our history for what has gotten us to this point today. Again, we've never had it so good. Right now, even though people get arrested all the time and go to jail, there is more marijuana being produced today than there was a year ago today. And there was 10 years ago, 20 years. More marijuana is being produced every day we are alive. And that is a sure sign we're winning. If there is more marijuana today than there was yesterday, then we're winning. If there's more marijuana today than there was a year ago, we're winning. And we are absolutely winning. In Canada and the United States, there are marijuana factories longer than this building, all producing marijuana. Every day, there's a new licensed provider in Canada somewhere going to be producing marijuana. In Washington, Colorado, there are new stores opening every day selling marijuana. And in the fall, in the first Tuesday in November, Alaska and Oregon and Washington, D.C., of all places, are legalizing the sale and possession of marijuana. And Florida is going to be one of the biggest states to legalize medical marijuana this November also. Every day something happens. Every day more marijuana is being produced than ever before. Every day somebody in the world, a politician, wants to try and legalize marijuana. The amount of activism in the United States that's coming from the establishment is stunning. In Canada, we're in a very peculiar situation. No politician except Justin Trudeau, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, ever talks about marijuana. It's very strange. You know, when they legalize marijuana, here's what happens. The federal government just takes it out of the schedule of controlled drugs and substances. It's going to take the Minister of Health 5 seconds to legalize marijuana. He's going to go, today, I removed marijuana from the schedule. Just the same way they made it illegal in 1923 when someone got up and said, Mr. Speaker, I have added marijuana to the schedule. Bang. 5 seconds it took him to make marijuana illegal with no discussion, debate. And they can make it that's how they made it illegal with 5 seconds of no discussion, debate. Well, that's how we can make it legal too. Mr. Speaker, today the health department removed marijuana from Schedule 1. The federal government now has no regulation of marijuana, so we are now entrusting it to the provinces, who officially are legally the people that would regulate the sale of marijuana. And that's how it'll be legalized. It's just, he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to get a vote of the House of Commons, doesn't have to get the Senate to approve anything. Just the Minister of Health just says it's no longer in the schedule. And therefore the provinces will begin to regulate it. Now in the United States, all the politicians from all the states are fascinated with what's going on in Colorado. All that tax money they're collecting in Colorado is earmarked for schools, hospitals, and even law enforcement. It's going to pay for things that people recognize as a necessity, as a good, as something that ought to happen. So Colorado is being investigated by state legislators all over America. They're going to Colorado, they're going to Washington. They're checking out what's happening, and people are coming back and introducing legalization bills in virtually every state legislature. But in Canada, none of our provincial politicians talk about legalizing marijuana. You never hear any of it. There's no debate going on between federal politicians already elected and state and provincial legislatures. Canada has a very cowardly political elected official culture. For some reason, even though the majority of Canadians want to legalize marijuana, no politician really talks about it. That's what in some ways makes Justin Trudeau very, very special. Not only has no leader who could be the Prime Minister ever said, I favor legalization, and that's the policy of my party, and that's the policy we're going to make happen. Not only has that never happened anywhere in Canada before, but we've never had an official party policy like the Liberal Party of Canada's policy is, that specifically says we're going to legalize marijuana, we're going to regulate its consumption and its sale, and we're going to have a regime similar to what is in fact in Colorado. That's the official party policy. Never had that happen before. And we've been misled before. I know why young people are cynical, though they don't think voting makes any difference. You know, 45 years ago, in 1970, August 1970, Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the father of Justin Trudeau, said we're going to decriminalize marijuana. The Ledain Commission says marijuana is not bad for it, we're going to decriminalize it. But it never happened. And then Joe Clark, the Conservative Prime Minister in 1970, said he was going to decriminalize marijuana, and it never happened. And then Jean Chrétien, more recently in 2003, said we're going to make marijuana decriminalized with a $100 fine at the most. That's it. And that never happened. And in 2002, we got the Senate's committee, a unanimous committee of 9 guys saying, listen, pot's harmless, it should be legalized. And nothing ever happened. And the man who was in charge of that committee, Senator Claude Nolan, is now the leader of the government in the Senate, and he never speaks about it. You know, Jack Layton came to my home, the NDP leader, in 2003 and said marijuana was a wonderful substance, we ought to legalize it, we ought to make it available under legal circumstances. It was a beautiful speech, and he went on to become the NDP leader, and then he never did anything about it. And so it goes. You know, we're constantly lied to, constantly betrayed by our political leaders, is that we want to put elected officials, and we've been left holding the bag. 45 years of being lied to, of having this horrible policy of prohibition, this colossal injustice. We've had 2 million Canadians given criminal records. 2 million people were arrested and convicted and given criminal records. Probably up to 3 million were actually arrested, and charges were dropped in many cases, as happens today. Why do we trust Trudeau? Well, we don't trust Trudeau. The only reason we should believe is believe in ourselves. You just have to show up. If 3 million of us just show up, it doesn't matter what Trudeau's intentions are. 3 million people is a big pissed off electorate. 3 million people is the largest demographic that could possibly show up to influence the outcome of any election. Those 3 million people could show up again to vote for somebody if they were really upset about it. And that's my point. We don't need to believe Justin Trudeau, we just need to support him because he has made the daring, bold move to say legalization is right and proper, it's the right public policy for Canada, it's something I believe in, it's something my party is committed to, and obviously if I get a majority government, he's saying, we will make this happen. And we have never had this opportunity in Canadian history. Americans have never had this opportunity. Nobody, as far as I know, around the world, no citizen of any country has ever been offered one election. Whereas if you show up, we legalize marijuana the next day. It's all over. Prohibition ends. We win the battle. The war is over. 45 years of people going to jail, being arrested, of cops busting houses, of killing animals, of even killing people, of running roughshod, of gangs. All that ends if you just show up. That one day, for 25, 35 minutes, if you just show up and you can get all your friends to go and you can get your family and everybody you know who believes that marijuana should be legalized, if you all just show up, the next day we party forever and ever and ever, and we never look back. We never look back. I mean, that's if you had told me, Mark, you're going to spend the next 25 years, you know, smoking joints and bongs and selling seeds, and you're going to go to jail for many, many years of your life. But one day, after 25 years of you being arrested, of you going to jail, of you being taken away, of you losing all your assets, of you being separated from your family and your wife, after all that, you're going to have one day in 2015, and if you can get your people together, it all ends on that day. On that day, the next day, after that day, the stores will start selling marijuana. People will walk the streets confident about the marijuana in their pocket. They're not going to get arrested. There will be medical marijuana science experiments and advancements every day after that because it'll be legal to study marijuana in universities. It'll be legal for doctors to recommend it. It'll be legal for doctors, judges, cops, politicians to smoke it and share it and understand it. It'll be legal to go and buy it. It'll be legal for ordinary people to grow it. It'll be legal for people to have a business that grows marijuana. It'll be legal for everybody to make vaporizers and bongs. All the books and magazines about marijuana will all be legal. No one will ever try and ban them ever again. No one will ever say a bad thing about pot smokers as a culture, as a way of demonizing them and sending them to jail. Because Mark, in 25 years, that one day, everybody showed up. And it was a happy, wonderful world ever since because everybody showed up. So that's my message. We've got a big opportunity coming in 14 months. I'm going to be touring the country relentlessly, telling everybody, even in other countries, you just need one day where everybody we know who smokes pot shows up. That'll be my message in Ireland. It'll be my message in Spain. It'll be my message in Vienna. It's going to be my message all across Canada. And it's certainly my message to all Americans who go to vote in Oregon and Alaska and Florida and Washington, District of Columbia. on the first Tuesday in November, if you show up, you'll never need to think about this ever again. You'll just be allowed to enjoy. You'll be allowed to be part of a culture that ought to be one of the most respected cultures in the history of mankind. Because I'll tell you this, the cannabis culture has given more to humanity and mankind, humankind, in science and entertainment and theater and arts, books and culture, and especially in music, than any other culture in the last 100 years. The cannabis culture is one of the greatest cultures in the history of mankind, starting with William Shakespeare, who smoked marijuana. Cannabis, actually. You know, so many great poets and writers and musicians and scientists and doctors and explorers, and to this day are movers and shakers. Bill Gates, Stephen Jobs, pot smokers. You know, Carl Sagan, pot smoker. Every musician you've ever cared to really enjoy a pot smoker. Most of the people who write today's great bestsellers and make today's great movies are pot smokers, including actors. And we are a great culture, but we've been denied our official right to be regarded as first-class citizens like everybody else who makes contributions and who ought to be acknowledged as a culture. And so, if they'd have told me 25 years ago, Mark, it's going to be a long road with a lot of difficulties, but one day in 2015, one day it all becomes real if you can get your people to show up. So that's my message. Thanks very much. I look forward to partying with you tonight. In fact, thank you for showing up I thought it would take a while before I was able to smoke some really good pot and lots of pot, but I found that I'm already there. So I have no fear. Tonight I am going to smoke a lot of pot, and I expect to be still standing by the end of the evening, but time will tell. Time will tell. And I look forward to meeting all of you. Thank you for coming tonight, and let's party.
Yeah, thanks, man. Hey guys, can we keep it going for Marc one more time? Marc fucking Emery, fucking unbelievable to have you here. Really glad to have you here. And honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, man, this place wouldn't. I'm just gonna wait till Opus is done whispering and sweet nothings in his ear. Dear Marc. Sorry, Opus. I'm sorry. Hey man, I just want to say, like, we've been doing comedy here for 8 years, and it's been given a lot of money to the artistic community and stuff like that. And none of us would have been able to do any of that without you doing your work, and we all want to say thank you very much for that. All the artists in here, all the comedians. So one more time, just for Marc Emery. It really helped the artistic community, man. Like, whether you knew it or not, dude. Cheers, man. This man made a lot of dick jokes possible for us, guys. Also, just gotta do some announcements real quick. We do this every Wednesday, every Thursday. We have shows every Sundays, the open mics. If you guys want to come by for that, please do. Podcasts with Opus and also Matt Murnaugh. So check that stuff out on Pod TV. And yeah, we what else? Go to THC, check that place out. And we're all really happy to have you guys here. Thanks again one more time. Give it up for all your Vapor Central staff. And give it up for the comedians. Give it up for the speakers. And give it up for Marc fucking Emery, man. Happy to have him back, everybody.
I feel very inspired after today. Heard lots of great things that are going to be helping my momentum and moving forward in the city I live and trying to change the way things are seen.
For a total daily smoking pothead can tell the public, oh, I smoke pot every day. Because right now, people might say, yeah, we smoke pot marijuana, but I don't know if I want to go. If legalization's on the ballot, I'm not going to be quiet about that. That should be the most historic thing. In my whole career, including 5.5 2.5 years in jail to get to this point is based on let's legalize pot, and you expect that I'm not going to make this the centerpiece of my next 14 months? That's absurd. In fact, you know, they're behaving in a way that says we like the attention you're giving to our party and all the media. No, I will be knocked on my ass. I'm not doing that. But I will smoke joints. And that's what I don't need after 28 hours, because I'll be lying flat horizontal.
Did I hear you'll smoke joints?
Yes.
There we are.
Right.
Good answer.
I may still end up horizontal, but it'll be a more mellow horizontal.
I believe that one is cadaver.
Toronto could go all liberal next election. Legalization, nobody's thought about what legalization really means in Canada. They think of all the regulations, oh, we should tax it this way or sell it that way. But in fact, legalization is going to be the health minister saying, I have informed the province that as of January 1st, marijuana is no longer in the schedule. And that the province
Take these from me. So I figured I'll try them out. And for the last 6 months, 2 crops now, it's been pretty good.
is no longer illegal federally. That's what legalization means. Very simple thing. So if the federal government starts talking about making it complicated, they don't have the right to do that. The provinces have the right to regulate it as an agricultural commodity. So that's what's going to happen. There'll be a big conference with all the premiers and the prime minister where he says, it's in your court now. We no longer have any federal jurisdiction. So all of a sudden we're going to use this big national debate. All these people who've been kept quiet saying, oh, well, it's a federal matter. That's totally vague, and you're going to be responsible for the regime by which legalization is implemented. Let's have this conversation. So we need to, not only do we need to vote, but we also need to start talking to our provincial legislators and pointing out that marijuana is going to be in your court really soon, right? Sooner than you thought about. Nobody's thinking about, well, every provincial legislature should be talking about how he sees legalization, because that's the next frontier after Justin Trudeau makes it legal. It's going to be provincially regulated.
Marc Emery.